So let's now talk about what happens when you have more than one light. In the previous videos, I've shown you how to set up one light, how to get the exposure correct, and how to position that light. But you can do more than that. You can do lots of great things with one light, but you can do even more if you understand how to use a second light. And there are really three different things you can do with your second light. You can either have it as a hair light, which I'll show you next, or a rim light, same sort of thing, to give a bit of separation from the background and put a bit of light coming through the person towards your camera. That's a really nice thing to do. You can use your second light as a fill light, so you can either position it below the person's face or on the opposite side of the face from the side. Basically, wherever the shadows are, you can reduce shadows, not completely, but you can either lift shadows a little bit or completely eliminate shadows to make the shot look how you want. So that's a fill light, or you can use your second light as a background light. So you may want to put some light on the background to make the background go pure white, or to highlight something on the background. Those are the three main things that you can do with your second light. It's hair light, fill light, or background light. So what I'm going to do now is talk you through each one of those individually. So first we will do a hair light. So a hair light really is to put a light through someone's hair, either someone with long hair to enhance and bring out the textures and shapes in the hair, or put a bit of light on the shoulder or down the cheekbone to sort of enhance the shape and the structure of a person's face, or just to separate them from a darkish background. So I'll talk you through my process for doing that. I always when I'm setting up lighting, especially when you start out, do a step-by-step approach. Don't kind of walk in there with 2 or 3 lights and stick them all down, try to get them all correct. Always go one by one and set up your main light first, get the look of that correct, and then set up the second light. So I'll show you the process I'm going to go through to set up a 2-light setup with one light as a main light and the other light as a hair light. Okay, so I'm now going to position my main light, which is this one here. I'm going to position it above and slightly to an angle for Natasha. I'm going to take one shot and get that right with one light first. So if I do that, I'm just going to test that just this light is firing, which it is. So I'll move it into the position that I want it, which I'll show you. Okay, so we're going to have it just here, slightly to an angle above eye level, and I'm going to take one shot just to make sure that I'm happy with the look of the main light there. Cool, okay, so I'll show you the shot there. So that's one light. As we did that, we've done that in previous videos. The exposure is still correct because I set that before and didn't change any settings. And I like the look of that shot, but if you look at that photo, maybe because the background is a little bit dark, we might just want to have a little bit of light here to bring out hair and the shoulders just to separate Natasha from the background. So I'm going to get my other light, which is there right now, and I'm going to position it on the opposite side to the main light, and I'll show you where I'm going to put that now. So you can see where that is. That is to an angle off to the side, high and behind Natasha. So this flash is going to stay exactly the same. This is the main light. I'm now going to turn on my hair light, and I can do that on the back of my trigger that I've got here, but if you've just got manual simple triggers, you may have to walk over to that light and change the settings on that and turn it on manually. That's fine, but this trigger works. I can control the power of the flashes with this trigger. Again, I'm going to stay with manual mode. This flash is on 1/16 power. That's just what I've ended up with on my settings. You may find you have different settings, but don't worry about that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make that flash at the back about half the power of the main light. So I'm going to start out with 1/32 for the hair light, 1/16 for the main light. And like I said, that's not a recipe to follow. That's just based on my settings. I've ended up with that flash at 1/16. The power of the flash is dictated by lots of things. The umbrella it shoots to, distance to the subject, the settings in the camera, but generally I like to have that start out with the hair light half the power of the main light. So let's just test that that one is working. It is, okay. So I'm going to take another shot now with both of these lights. So Natasha's going to look slightly that way again, cool. Cool. So you can see just subtly a little bit of light coming through into that light, into her hair and a bit on her shoulder, just to sort of separate her from the background a little bit. I'm going to just adjust the position of that flash a little bit, just so that you can see the difference. Maybe we'll move it around a bit more to the side. And we'll take another shot now just to show you the difference. Good, and just to show you what happens if I turn up the power of that flash. So let's go for, so that now both at the same power, 1/16, just to give it a bit more impact. Yeah, so you can clearly see on that shot there, you can see on Natasha's shoulder and her arm, and also in her hair, you can see the effect of hair light. It's kind of separating her from the background. So that's a very simple thing you can do with your second light. Main light here, get that correct first. Then your second light as a hair light, just as I've done. Play around with the angles, the power. 2 lights, usually hair light on the opposite kind of side to the main light, and you're good to go. So let's talk about using your second light as a fill light. So we've got our main light, which we've set up and we've already explained. The next thing we can do with our light is use it as a fill light. The next thing we do with our second light is use it as a fill light. Now what a fill light is designed to do is fill the shadows. So you can, in certain shots, you might want loads of shadows on someone's face, but you might want to have completely no shadow or just reduce the shadow and have quite a subtle shadow. Using a fill light lets you control exactly how deep the shadows are. So usually what I do with a fill light is I position it on the opposite side of the person's face to the main light. I mean, that's fairly obvious. So the main light is going to light from this side, and then the fill light is going to put some light in here. I really dislike shots where it's totally evenly lit. I still want to have some structure and some shadow, so I will usually have my main light perfectly exposed on this side, for example, and then just have a bit of fill with a lower power flash just to still show the detail in this side of the face, but to lift it a little bit out of the shadow. So I'm going to do this with a kind of a Rembrandt lighting setup. So I'm going to position my main light so that it gives us quite an angular light with lots of shadow towards the camera, which I'll set up first. And then I'll introduce the fill light. And the reason for introducing the fill light, you'll see as I take the shot, will just bring more detail into that side of the face. And none of this is right or wrong. It's totally up to you. It's a creative decision that you have to make when you do lighting. So I'll set up my first light first, the main light here. So I'm going to just make sure that I'm only triggering the main light. I'm going to turn on my trigger. We're good to go. And just make sure that this light is turned off. So that's going to be my full light. This will be my main light. So let me set this one up first. So Natasha's going to look kind of that way a little. Sorry, it's kind of this way into that corner. Yeah, cool. And let's pop. Let's just do it. Yeah, so I have quite a nice shot there. I have a kind of a Rembrandt type look. I have a lot of shadow towards the camera. I like the shot, but I'm just going to use a fill light here to remove some of that shadow in from the front of Natasha's face, the side of the light that's towards us. So let's just do that now. Okay, so now you can see I have this light here. I'm just going to make sure now that this fill light is turned on. Okay, and I'm going to start with the fill light at a low power and then go up from there. So I kept my main light the same as I've had it throughout this entire session, which is 1/16 power. Again, if you watch earlier videos, you'll see how I got the exposure of that correct. So let's get the fill light here to, let's go, if the main light is 1/16, let's go for 1/64. So a couple of stops less powerful than the main light to start with, and see how we like the look of that shot. Let's just do a test. Yeah, they're both firing. So this is our main light. This is our fill. Natasha's there, cool. Okay, and you can see already that shot compared to the shot without the fill, you can see you still have the shadow, but it's now quite a nice shot. You still have some shadow, but we've lifted it. We have less shadow. It's fine, they're both good, but there's nothing right or wrong with either. So now just for the sake of completeness, I'm going to put both lights on the same power. So now this is 1/16, that's 1/16. And do a shot. And now you can see that is really very evenly lit. So you now have no shadow, and that's purely by introducing the fill light. So the first shot that I'm showing you now is the shot without any fill. Then we move to the fill with about 2 stops less bright, which you can see that reduces the shadow, but you still have some shadow, still quite interesting. And then the final shot, the 2 lights are roughly the same power, and we have that shot that you can see there, which is very evenly lit, which I'm not a huge fan of, but just to show you that you can use a fill light to totally even up the shot and reduce any shadows. Another type of fill light you can do is this, which is called clamshell lighting. You have the main light quite high and shooting straight down in front of the person's face you're shooting, and the second light is a fill light from below. So first I'll show you how it looks when you only fire the main light. So that means that only this light at the top is going to fire. Yeah, exactly. So this light at the bottom is not going to fire. This light from above, which is fairly straight on and fairly high at a high angle, is going to be our main light, and I'll show you how that looks first. So you can see that's quite a nice shot, but we have kind of some shadows underneath the chin here, and we have shadows underneath the eyes as well. What I'll do is I'll now introduce the fill light from below, which I'll have at probably 2 stops less power. So this is 1/16. This will be 1/64, so let me turn that one on. Just test they're both firing, and then take this shot now. So yeah, great, and that worked really well. So you can see that you have this really nice kind of clamshell, kind of a beauty style lighting, pushing lots of light back up into Natasha's face. Her eyes are nicely lit. We've kind of still got a little bit of shadow around under her eyes and under her chin, but much less compared to the first shot, which was quite contrasty shadow. And it's just another really nice way to create portraits of people. They always look good with a main light above, some fill light from below, about 2 stops less bright. You can try 1 stop, 3 stops, play around with it, have them exactly the same, but you can see the look of having a main light high and straight on, fill light below is a really nice look. It looks, I use a fill light from below on nearly everybody that I use, and it's just a really flattering type of light that people look really good in. Something else that you can do with the second light is use it to light the background. So you can see in this studio we have a white wall as a background. I can, if I have enough power in my background light, make the wall go more or less completely white. So my process as usual is to set up my main light how I want it to be, and then step by step, the next step is to introduce the second light, which in this instance will be the background light, and get that to be how it is. So first I'm going to take a shot. I've already spoken in previous videos about getting your exposure correct for your main light, so I already know that this is right, but if you want to look at that, look at one of the previous videos and getting your flash exposure correct. So let me take the shot with just this light here first of all, and I'll show you that one. Fine, okay, so it's good. Nothing wrong with it, but the way I set my camera up and my ambient exposure, I'm getting a slightly, not a dark background, but it's not pure white. So you may decide you want to get much more light onto the background. So my first step would be, you can see that I have a light just directly here, pointing directly at the background, a white wall. I'm now going to turn on the light on the background, so I can do that from my trigger that I can do here. You may have to do it by walking over to the flash, but on my trigger I can turn on that light, which I've done. So the main light here is on 1/16 power, which is just what I ended up at. That's not a recipe for how you should do it, but if you understand how to set up your flash exposure correctly, as I've spoken about in previous videos, you will have this flash set up on the correct power to get the correct exposure as the main light. That's always the first step. Then I'm going to turn on that light that's pointing at the background, and I'm going to start with that 1/64, which is 2 stops less bright than the main light, and I'm going to show you how that looks. And you can see already that is, the background is now, is almost white, is quite bright white. I'm going to turn it up to more just to see what happens. So let's go from 1/64 to 1/16, so 2 stops brighter. And let's do that shot again. And now you can see we have more or less a completely white background. Let's just go, now this background light is on 1/4. Well, let's go 1/2 power and let's see how that looks. Just slightly step that way up. And now you can see totally pure white background. So we're totally overexposing the background, giving us a pure white shot, which I think looks better usually in black and white. So I'll do that, but it just goes to show you can keep we kept the main light exactly the same power. We didn't change that. All I did was played around with the look of that background light. Your setting is going to change depending on what color your background is, how far your background light is from the background, the position of it, but just set up your main light, keep it as it is, and then just play with the power of the background light. I've spoken about different things you can do with a second light here. So we have the main light and we think about that first always, and then our second light can be a hair light, it can be a fill light, or it can be a background light. Those are the three main things you're going to use your second light for. So really, when you're using off-camera flash or any type of lighting, your basic thoughts, your basic structure is main light, hair light, background light, fill light. You can use all of them in one shot. You can just use just the main light, or you can use just a main light and a fill light, just the main light and a hair light, just the main light and a background light, or any combination of those that you see fit, and you can turn them on or off and really change the look of your shot. So working out what you're going to do with the second light is a really fun and creative thing to do to make your lighting look different. Master one light first. You're always going to have that main light. Think about that first. Always set that up. Think about ambient light, getting that correctly exposed, correctly set up. Think about main light second, what modify, use the position of it, all that sort of stuff. And then think about what you could add or subtract from this shot with a second light. Can you subtract shadows with a fill light? Can you add light to the background, or can you add some light to the hair? Or in another way to emphasize texture or shape in some way with a second light.